The Kansas two-step just got its toes stepped on by a U.S. District Court judge. This is reported by the Kansas Reflector. KHP ordered to pay plaintiffs $2.3 million for unconstitutional Kansas two-step traffic policy. And of course, the state is appealing the federal judge's injunction to end KHP's improper vehicle searches because they want to continue the practice of being improper. They don't care about your rights. They just want to nab your property and throw you into the lucrative court system. For those who aren't aware, the Kansas two-step is performed by the Kansas Highway Patrol as they practice the use of traffic law as a pretext to greenlight the unconstitutional practice of searching your vehicle without reasonable suspicion that a crime is afoot. So step 1 is the unconstitutional traffic stop, and step 2 is the cop's excuse to further intrude upon your life and use your rights as a doormat. This is how they legally steal your property. Now, it's also a physical act where when they're done with the traffic stop, they take 2 steps, turn around, and start engaging you in conversation that you shouldn't be a part of. The Kansas Highway Patrol is ordered to pay $2.34 million in attorney fees and other costs following a successful challenge to constitutionality of the state law enforcement agency's practice of detaining motorists and searching vehicles without establishing reasonable suspicion. Now remember, reasonable suspicion is the fiction fabricated by the tyrant-staffed court that approved Terry v. Ohio. It's a lesser standard to probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed. The American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas and the National ACU and this law firm went to court in 2020 to assert that KHP's policy guiding traffic stops violated the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution because troopers engaged in unreasonable searches and seizures of cars and trucks in the quest to deter drug trafficking on major highways. Because public safety will always be used as the alibi of tyrants, there will always be what they call a good excuse to trample your freedoms. But then traffic law alone does that pretty well itself. On Friday, this U.S. District Court judge issued a financial award in response to a request submitted by plaintiffs in March for more than $3 million in compensation from the Kansas Highway Patrol. One of the spokesmen for the ACLU of Kansas said, "This is an incredibly resource-intensive case, and we are extremely gratified that the district court recognized the value of the tremendous amount of hard work that our entire team of dedicated attorneys and legal staff poured into this case over the past 4 years. And it sucks that we live in a day and age where you have to pour this kind of time and resources into an action that is expressly prohibited by the Constitution." He said, "We believe that such an award serves not only to vindicate our client's pursuit for justice, but also to send a message to recalcitrant government agencies that willfully disregard the Constitution's fundamental protections of our civil rights." Isn't that what government is in the business of? The article says, under the KHP's two-step method, troopers pulled over a motorist for an alleged traffic infraction, completed that interaction, and took a few steps away from the vehicle before turning around to ask the driver if he would voluntarily answer unrelated questions that might reveal information a trooper could use to order a roadside search of the vehicle. And of course, KHP attorneys argued that detaining motorists with the two-step maneuver was a legal and appropriate action in the war on illegal drugs. And this is where the propaganda and the delusion comes in. There is no war on drugs. That's a 50-year-old cover story to get the masses to buy into the real war being waged, the war on people. Now, the government knows that when you enact prohibition laws, you create a criminal class that wouldn't exist without those laws. It was like this during alcohol prohibition. You had warring alcohol running gangs shooting each other in the streets because the only way people could get their alcohol fix was through competing organizations who took the risk to bring a much needed and much demanded product to the market. You can't legalize morality, and creating more laws doesn't eliminate demand. As a matter of fact, creating more laws creates more criminals to run through the system, which makes even more money. So if you wonder what the problem is, all you got to do is follow the money. As a matter of fact, human nature dictates that when you tell somebody they can't have something, they want it even more and will go to great lengths to possess the very thing the government tells them not to possess. The judge, following jury trials in which verdicts were returned against KHP, issued a permanent injunction in November forbidding the agency from continuing to rely on policies that unconstitutionally transformed basic traffic stops, most of which are unconstitutional themselves, into lengthy vehicle searches by drug-sniffing dogs. The judge said, as wars go, this one is relatively easy. It's simple and cheap, and for motorists, it's not a fair fight. The war is basically a question of numbers. Stop enough cars, and you're bound to discover drugs. And what's the harm if a few constitutional rights are trampled along the way? The federal judge said KHP's two-step theory on detention of motorists was based on an insufficient grasp of reasonable suspicion and invoked without the knowledge, intelligent, and voluntary consent of people targeted by troopers. The judge directed KHP to inform motorists when a traffic stop had ended and to tell motorists that they were free to leave without consenting to inquiries unrelated to a traffic infraction. She also directed troopers to notify drivers that they had the right to revoke consent for a vehicle search at any time. So let's say you give them consent and a quarter of the way through, you tell them, hey, officer, I revoke consent. They got to stop searching. And this is why Kansas Highway Patrol is appealing this. They don't want people they stop to realize they have any power at that traffic stop. By appealing, they're saying that they want to continue to exploit and intimidate the masses that they're supposed to be protecting and serving. So wake up, people of Kansas and America. Your protectors are villains, and they're admitting it. Her injunction placed KHP under court supervision for 2 to 4 years, mandated instruction of troopers on the difference between reasonable suspicion and mere speculation as it related to traffic stops, and imposed requirements for documenting traffic stops and detention of motorists and permission to search a vehicle. An appeal of this judge's order, filed with the 10th Circuit of the U.S. Court of Appeals on behalf of KHP Colonel Eric Smith, would seek to preserve the two-step approach to gaining access to vehicles that troopers suspected contained illegal drugs. This action by Colonel Smith sounds just like the letter approved by nearly every sheriff in America demanding that civil asset forfeiture, which is really legalized armed robbery, be kept in place. But get this. In response, the Court of Appeals stayed enforcement of the judge's injunction applicable to KHP's method of conducting traffic stops. And just so you know, when a Court of Appeals stays this kind of enforcement, it means that the higher court has temporarily halted the implementation of the injunction. This stay effectively puts the injunction on hold until the Court of Appeals can fully review the case and make a decision on its validity. So before anybody in Kansas breathes a sigh of relief, you got to know that during this period of stay, the KHP can continue to conduct traffic stops using this existing method without being bound by the restrictions imposed by this injunction. So in essence, the stay of enforcement allows KHP to operate under its current policies until the Court of Appeals reaches a final decision on the matter. After the judge declared KHP's policy to be unconstitutional in July, the agency's superintendent said KHP would, quote, endeavor to ensure that our enforcement operations respect constitutional rights and comply with the law as we carry out our mission of service, courtesy, and protection. One of ACLU's plaintiffs was awarded $40,000 in 2023 for misconduct by KHP troopers during a traffic stop in 2019. The former legal director for the ACLU said, and I agree, these practices turn something minor like a traffic violation into a degrading and lengthy roadside detention. When we give police the power to conduct these pretextual stops, assume people to be drug traffickers, and use flimsy justifications to get inside their vehicles to prolong traffic stops, we turn what should be a simple ticket release scenario into something longer, fraught, and complicated. And we all know that Kansas isn't the only state using traffic stops to violate rights. So what state do you live in? And do you have a personal experience you can share where a cop used traffic law to violate you? Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab a shirt, become a channel member, but more importantly, understand what your rights are and exercise your rights. If you don't flex your rights, you will lose them. I'll see you in the next video.